Okay guys, we're back and we are going to do this homework assignment together. We're going to advance the shading concept here a little bit, and we're going to do some areas of bark plates. So these are two you've already seen. This is the back of the heel one, and then this is one of the hands that you've drawn before. And I'm going to go through this with you, and you can just shade right along with the video. But I think I don't have time to do a lot of enough instruction in class, but I'm assigning these for homework, so I'm going to do them along with you, and then we'll accomplish a lot that way, hopefully. Okay, so this is light and shadow on a sphere, which you've already learned the concept of, and it's shading gently, just like we have been doing for the past couple of weeks. And this is also grid drawing, because these are zoomed in, and so we're going to do this just like you learned before with Mrs. Welsh, I'm sure. So you're going to measure the intersection point. So I have an intersection point here. I'm going to go over about the same amount and mark where this part of the heel starts. I've got another intersection point down here. I've got an intersection point over here where the shadow is, and then the heel itself starts up here. I want to go in about this far. This is an articulation point, just like we did with the Parthenon horse. And then here's another articulation point that goes straight in. And I'm doing these side by side so I'm able to measure. I don't want to be too fussy about this, but we're going to look at where things intersect. All right, so if I'm going to draw the basic shape of the heel, I'm still observing what I see over here on the bark plate. I'm going to try to capture this curve. And I can see them both at the same time, just like you have a still life in front of your paper and you're trying to see them both at the same time at a glance. You're going to keep these two things next to each other, and that's going to help you mimic the shapes. So there are a couple of things when you're drawing that are being tested. One is, can you see it? Can you see what's being drawn in front of you? Meaning the source. And then the other thing is, do you have the coordination and skill with your hands to put it down on paper? So we're working on both of these things. And just like with the sphere, we're going to do some kitten pressure with a sharp pencil. I got a Statler here and a Ticonderoga, and I think you're going to need one of those brands of pencil, because we found that the no-name brands just don't make the richness of mark. I'm only expecting you to have a number 2 pencil for this. You may use value pencils if you want. You may not use charcoal. You may not smudge. We're going to learn to be in control of our pencil so that we don't need to do those things. This is not a charcoal drawing kind of a thing, unless you're going to use really sharp, fine charcoal, which we're not going to do. We're doing a bark plate, but I'm a contemporary artist. I don't think that we need to be completely as fine about it as we possibly could. That's not the skill I'm trying to develop. We want accuracy and control over our pencil. So I want to get rid of these lines that I made to guide me, because I want a finer transition here. And I'm also going to sharpen my pencil. very little pressure, but I am making marks here because I always want to be able to go back and change something if I want. And I also want to build value, darker value through layering, not through pressure. Pressure destroys my paper, and it also robs the richness that's possible in the drawing with the graphite. And I'm slightly turning my pencil to maintain a fine point. Try to imitate the shape over here. See, I have this line that's helping guide me about where the dark part of the shadow should be. And I've been asked, aren't you going back and forth? And I can only control my pressure in one direction. Okay, so my pencil might hit the paper in both directions, but I'm controlling it when it's coming towards me. You can also notice that my default is this diagonal that feels very comfortable to my hand. But if I were drawing something from life that was in front of me, let's say I was going to draw this glass, I would never like color it in while I wasn't looking at it because I know that this is dark. I always want to be reacting to the thing that I'm trying to draw, the thing that I'm observing. And in this case, it's a bark plate. So it's already been drawn. He's done a lot of the work for me. He's already flattened the image just like a photograph would. I'm trying to see how dark we can get this because this whole area is consistently dark, but then there's a little bit of lightness right here where the value just takes one step up. So I want to be careful of that because complexity adds interest. So I want to make sure I observe the complexity and also these kind of subtleties can help. Now, do you see this? I didn't even notice this at first. So as you spend time doing this, you're going to notice more and more because your observation becomes more keen. So there's a light spot right here. Now I just marked the paper, but there's a light spot right here, and I want to put that in. So I'm gonna guide myself here, just with very light pressure. I'm gonna lay that in. And because this part isn't completely white, that helps me make this transition. It softens the transition for me. Well, okay, it allows me to soften the transition because I'm not going from fairly dark to fairly light so quickly. I'm going to try to minimize my pencil marks. I'm going to change directions. Okay, and now I'm starting to see there's a little bit of a coarse shadow right here, just like there would be on a sphere, and a tiny bit of reflected light right here on the inside of the heel. So these things are starting to be noticeable to me just because I've been looking at this for a while. It takes a minute, almost like your eyes need to adjust. But your observation becomes more and more keen as you study the image. So I want to think about the value between this and the heel, which is quite a bit darker. I don't think I can get that dark with a number 2 pencil. So I'm going to do my best. At the end here, if I remember, I can show you what I could do with a value pencil. So if I were drawing this with an HB, for example, or even a number 2, and then I'll go in with a value pencil. Okay. That gives me some opportunity to find those darkest darks with a pencil that can actually handle that value. Because if I press harder in order to try to achieve darkness, I am just going to end up with shiny paper that's a little bit out of my control and has lost its clarity. So I don't want to do that. I feel like I'm coming over here too far. And I'm watching what I'm doing. I'm going to look at the thing that I made as my pencil makes it, and I'm going to react. And notice how often I'm sharpening my pencil. When you're sharpening your pencil this often, it doesn't take much to sharpen it. It's already pretty sharp. So you're just touching it up a little bit, so it's not a big investment of your time. But there's enormous satisfaction in crafting something that's really well done, really accurate and soft and carefully considered. Because you get to be critical of yourself as you watch yourself draw, but you also get to see the thing that you've made, which is exciting. People love to watch people draw or paint, and you can watch yourself, and then other people can watch you. You can invite your whole family to come stand around you while you draw like a party trick, like you're doing a party trick, and the image emerges. Okay, I want to get rid of these construction marks that I've made, because I don't need them anymore. They're a distraction. The resolution of these is always a struggle for me. I scan these from the book of bark plates that I have, but it just feels like they're not as fine as I'd like them to be. So you make a beautiful version of it. Because you can tell the difference in value, and then you create the thing that it should be. This is not bright white, so I need a little bit of a pass across here. I'm going to try to keep this from looking like I made this turn with pencil marks. And I'm starting to get a little bit of that dark spotting right here. I'm going to pounce this a little bit. this one seems sharp enough. I'm gonna lay in this value. Okay, and I think this is too dark. If I look at the relative value, I think this is too dark. I'm just gonna take that out. Okay, so I'm pretty close. This drawing's about done. And I can't keep layering this to cover my tracks, but I can pounce a little bit just to soften this. And that works really well. Maybe I want it a little bit darker, so I'll go in a different direction. So I left some of the graphite on there. Maybe I went too far. I'm gonna just pounce again, just a little bit. Okay, I think I'm happy enough with that. Now this area over here, I just see I can't get the darkness that the photocopy has out of a number 2 pencil. And I have like a little bit of an eraser thing or something underneath. Okay, now I need a, so I'm just gonna fuss with this a little bit more. Okay, now this is acceptably dark for a number 2 pencil. But if I pull my value pencils here, let's see, if I go to a 2B, this is a 2B. Let me try a 3B. I just want you to be able to see the value of value pencils, haha. I know that a lot of what we do in class is basically theoretical, but here we go. Let's see how this works. So I still have this darkness that I can't get. Can you see it? I don't know how well this shows on the video, but it's significantly lighter. But now I'm gonna bring in this darker pencil. 3B might not be as dark as I need, but let's try it. See where we get. Okay, so I'm starting to get a richer, darker color here with the 3B. Let's go a little bit more. Let's see if we can find a 6B. 6B, here we go, really dull. So a 6B is soft. It's not gonna stay sharp very well. I'm gonna get it to a nice fine point. And all of this can just blend together, because this softer pencil kind of fills in really nicely. And I can stop here where I want this lighter area. I don't have to do everything with a pass of the 6B, because I just really want to reserve it for these areas with the depth, with that dark value. I'm going to turn my pencil because it's starting to dull on the one side, but I still have a sharp side on the other. I'm constantly looking over here. I'm going to feather out just a little bit. All right, and then we've got darkness here in the cast shadow and darkness around this rim. Almost like there's an umbra there, that really dark spot that doesn't get any light into it. there's almost like a little bit of an outline here. So this allows me to get a darker value. That was a really good way to demonstrate that. So practical use instead of theoretical use. Here we go. So if you have value pencils, you can see, well, you might want to pull those out and just get that full depth. This is still, well, look, from my angle, this looks like it has a little bit of a glare on it, so it seems lighter, but if I tip it up so that the light isn't visible or isn't reflecting as much on here, I can see that this is more dark. And then I don't have a white eraser in front of me, but use a white eraser for this instead. But I'm just gonna clean up these edges because I did all this work to make this nice drawing. And I want it to look like I stayed inside the lines. Okay, so there we go. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Let me get out my 2H. And I'm gonna hit this light spot with a 2H. Because I'm just not quite satisfied that this is dark enough for what I want. Oh, pressed too hard. Just got the wrong angle of the pencil there. But as you invest in this drawing, you start to see things that you didn't see originally. And you want to just, you know, fuss a little bit to see if you can make those transitions nice and smooth, and most of all, accurate to what you see over here. I'm also mixing graphite a little bit at this point, which is fine, but just as long as you know that that's what you're doing. Okay, I'm happy with that. You turn that into me, I'm happy. I could fuss a little bit more, but I'm not going to. That's enough. Okay, so let's go down to this one. We'll do the same thing. I'll go back to the number 2 pencil. At least when I'm making this video in 2024, I'm not expecting you to have value pencils, but I will in future years. So, all right, let's look for articulation marks, articulation points again. This is a little bit cut off. This should be here and this should be here like that. So we're gonna go ahead and complete the finger. But I'm gonna cut this part off over here in my drawing. And then I'm gonna look at, where does this come? It's almost halfway. So if this is the halfway mark, then I'm just a little bit over and the hand comes down that forefinger. And you guys probably recognize this. You drew this already, the whole thing. But for this assignment, we're just gonna focus on really subtly shading this one area. This is a more complex drawing than this. So we're advancing ever so slightly by doing both of these from one to the other. And I want you to be accurate, but I want you to train your sight. I'm not that interested in you measuring accurately by like artificially, but I could cite this. I could say, okay, the width of the knuckle right here is this. So if that makes you feel comfortable, that's fine. Because I've taught you to cite, it's a valuable skill. I should probably force myself to cite more. Okay, then we're gonna make this line across here. And I'm always looking at the drawing of bark out of the corner of my eyes. I'm making my own because I don't want to be inaccurate, and I want to glance at both of these at the same time. I'm always comparing back and forth. Okay, so this line is inaccurate, so we're going to get rid of it. And then there's a tiny little bit of light down there, so I'm going to account for that. And then we've got a shadow shape here. Okay. And then we have a shadow shape here that goes from kind of like, this almost looks like a thigh, even though I know it's a finger. So as it goes down right here and makes that curve, has a shadow that goes up. And now I don't feel like this is tall enough, this rectangular kind of trapezoidal shape. So I'm going to go up a little further with it. Okay. I'm going to start to shade. I always start with some place that's a little bit dark, just so I can start to make marks and get into it. And I know I'm going to need to put a lot of layers here. There's this teardrop shape right here. But I don't want to completely draw it out if I don't need to, because then I have construction lines under my shading and I don't want to have to erase any more than necessary. Okay. And the kind of drawing that this is a little bit different, well, substantially different actually, than reacting to something from life. A lot of the work is done for me. I'm just copying the decisions of another artist, but I'm also observing his handling of the image. My drawing, I'm almost testing myself. Can I see it? Can I see what he actually put down here? And then I'm testing my coordination. How much control does my hand have over this pencil? I need my eyes and my hand to work together, but in a way that's a little bit beyond just a physical basic operation. Okay. So I'm just getting some basic values laid in here. And just like I tell you that you've got to get your painting covered with paint in order to see where you are in terms of value, value is relative. My values are relative to this to some degree. I'm trying to imitate this, which is right next to it. I'm not making a decision out there in space about what my value system is going to be, because that's already been decided for me by Bargue. So you see how that's a simplification, but I can't see the relative values inside this drawing till I get something on the paper. So I'm going to try to do a basic pass here just to say, okay, well, what's not going to be white anymore? And then I can make comparisons about getting rid of medium values, for example. Okay, now this almost looks photographic. It's really fantastic. Very subtle. The way he shaded this drawing around his finger, around this finger. I think it's a woman's finger. But I'm going to try to capture this subtlety. I can see the tip of her knuckle right there. articulates the form in a really specific way. I'm always telling you to look for the specific, capture that particular thing, not the general thing. Try not to lose my pencil sharpener. The subtle gradation really makes this drawing worth looking at, so I want to make sure I get that in. My pencil's starting to burnish a little bit, so I'm going to turn it. I know you can't see this, but okay, and then here's an exciting area here. Okay, now I'm starting to notice this little highlight here that I did not notice before, and I want to make sure I get that in there because that is the highlight on this finger, just like this right here is the highlight on this finger. And that shows the interaction of the light. So that actually that shows the relationship of the light to these fingers and therefore reveals the relationship between the fingers. So I know that doesn't maybe seem obvious, or maybe it does seem obvious, but this is showing us where the light is hitting both of these fingers. And that subtlety matters. And it's also another way that I can put something specific in here. My pencil. But I need to keep moving out of here because this is relative value and I don't have enough value in here to look at the relative value. So I need to get this passed over. None of this is pure white, so I've got to get a pass across this finger. This is pretty much white. There's a tiny, tiny bit. All right. I'm going to use my 2H. Because I just don't like how much graphite is going to get laid down by the number 2. But if that's all you have, that's what you've got. So there are just some things that we can't do with a number 2 pencil, which is why we have other ones. Okay. We'll go back to the number 2 here. Now this is my darkest area here, except for right here. So we're going to try to get this to be a stronger value, and that way I can see this whole thing better. looks like my marks are. Now, eventually, I'm going to go back over this with the 6B like I did over here. And I know that that's going to fill in some of this patterning. All right, let's take this value down here. And this is a subtle transition. It's not a vertical line like I have it. Let me get some value in here, and then maybe I'm gonna pounce that line out. And of course, the order that I'm doing this in, or the decisions that I'm making, can certainly be done another way. As long as I'm keeping my direction of shading moving in different directions, keeping my pencil sharp so that I don't have that dullness that comes with a dull pencil. But I can do this in any order that seems convenient. Okay, see, I think this should be lighter. This is almost white, very light here. There's like this more value, darker value right here. Just right here on the edge. Got a transition here. I'm gonna try to soften that edge. This is all about control. How do I control Okay, so here's an opportunity, because this light, it's up against the dark. We've got contrast right there. Do you see that? We got a very close to a lightest light and very close to a darkest dark. And so that's an opportunity for contrast, which also adds interest. A subtle transition between them. Like I said, I can only get so far with a number 2 pencil. So while we're in this area, I'm gonna get, let me go back to the 3B. Here's the 3B. It's pretty sharp. Let's see how this does. And then if I just bring this out a little bit into the shadow, gives me that like little bit of dimension down here. That softness, that really soft transition. Okay, and then if I were to use a 6B, get it even a little bit darker. I don't want it to shine. So I'm going to be subtle about the amount of pressure that I'm using. And then this, the shadow over on this side is actually what's darkest. It's not the finger on top. So I've got to keep this lighter than the shadow in order to make that contrast work and really define the shape of the fingers. Okay. And I'm just constantly looking back here. What do I see? What do I see? And if you see something that I'm missing, that's great. That helps, you know, indicate to yourself that you're seeing subtlety. Okay. Now, I want this to be a little bit lighter. This shape kind of comes across here the way I have it, but then it also dips down. So I'm going to pounce right here to try to get it to be lighter. And maybe I work back into it, but at least I'm looking at how the shapes are feeding into each other. Okay. Got a dark area right here. Okay. Now over here, I want to come back and bring this around a little bit. There's like this little flex that happens in her skin. I capture that, like a little bit of a linear, horizontal linear quality there. I'm gonna cover my tracks over there. Okay, this is too dark. I don't know. That's better. Might have to go back in, but, and I think the shape is wrong. I think up here it's actually pretty light. So maybe this whole shape is not quite. I'm going to pick up my 2H to this transition. Okay. Okay, now that I'm really into this, look at what a mess that line is. Okay, and over here, just gonna soften that up a little bit. To my number 2. Now there's a darkness under this little, at the bottom of this little webbing in the hand. If you feel like there's not enough light here, just gonna pounce a tiny bit. I don't know if that's better, but so 2 each. Okay, this shape's not quite right over here. There's a little less distinction than what I have in that area. And then I'm gonna get my 6B. I'm gonna pounce this edge a little bit. Okay, and then I'm gonna get my 6B. I'm gonna try to go in here. And no more pressure. I'm not using any more pressure with this pencil than I used with the other ones. But because it lays down that richer, darker graphite, it does a lot of work for me. I'm gonna keep it sharp because I don't want to dull my drawing with a dull pencil, especially here at the end. All right, and the whole thing is gonna pop if we get this dark value in here. Uh-oh, my pencil point is breaking. Ta-da, ta-da. Okay. Pretty close, pretty close. All right, I think I'm happy enough with this. Maybe there's some dark in here that I haven't captured yet. And now I'm full circle here, thinking about that little spot of light. Okay, I think I'm happy enough with this. And I can fuss with it more. But I don't think that's necessary. I'm gonna clean up these edges so that it looks like I colored in the lines. I don't want that to be a distraction, because sloppiness is a distraction from the fineness that you have in your work. So we're just gonna try to keep it clean as much as possible. And all right, so there's your assignment. I hope this was helpful. I look forward to seeing what you guys draw.